Hello, I hope you all are doing so well. I'm doing a twilight video today. It's getting darker outside and I really don't like to turn on these lights. They're just too bright for me. So I know it's a little bit dark and I apologize for that. But I just posted a whole bunch of sketch videos on my other YouTube channel. We are working through this distorted Divine Mother energy. These last few weeks, it's been coming up big time. And I cannot impress enough into the energies how massive and important this is, that this is starting to come up now. We're really starting to get some brilliant clarity around how this energy has really been plugging and sealing the field from being within our own range, being able to see our own light properly, and then also being distorted and distracted by others who are telling us that we have all this stuff going on inside of us. We need to continue to work with them, to reach out to them. Fears of becoming infected, fears of having demons in our field, all this kind of stuff. So that's going to continue to build and to come out. I'm trying to get that out as, let's say, efficiently as I can, but I'm running into like the energies really need to be clarified. And that's really what this kind of these first three videos are, really clarifying what is distorted mother? What is it in the physical realm, how we experience it? And how does it relate to the bigger picture of union, which is union within our own field, which is what we came here to do, to discover the distortion in our energy field, and why we came here to the earth realm to do it, because she holds that perfected source code, except that energies were able to come in and kind of plug that and then kind of masquerade as source code. But so now we're talking about distorted source code, distorted Divine Mother code, distorted earth code, essentially. So more to come on all of that, but I've linked in the description box below the first of those three that I put out. So make sure to watch those like backwards. Obviously the way I have to upload them, right, it shows the last first. So, but I'll link it to the first of those three that I posted. So, I had come in on Friday to actually start doing those videos, and like I said, didn't really work out, so I had to kind of backtrack. So this is where we are today. But I did just want to mention, so we've got all that coming up, right? Feeling a little bit, a lot of mental stuff, right? Because this is where this energy most manipulates us, is through the mind. And when we're talking about distorted mother, we all have a relationship with our own mothers, right? So this is where we start to understand the energy through the physical, through our own mother relationships. And what I'm starting to see is that a female has a very different relationship with the mother than the male does. And I'm not just talking about men versus women, right? But in the energetic code, it translates much differently. And this is kind of part of the piece that we've been really missing, especially when we start to talk about union. And why does the male energy tend to run from the connection? Because he's perceiving the female as distorted mother. But then we have to start to backtrack and say, okay, he's got to look at his own relationship with his mother and figure out, where is that distortion? Where does he continue to kind of connect into that negativity, believing and thinking this is source origin, right? Which we all have to do in all of our relationships. We have to step back and we have to recognize what is really playing out in these situations, which is why I come in and continue to talk just about my daily life, because this is how we learn how to see through the systems and the programs. So kind of jumping, but I know it all connects. I wanted to talk a little bit today about a couple of things. So I'm just going to use these stories to kind of describe energies and how this distorted source code has been playing out in our lives, right? So when I think this was about a year ago, and I was still struggling with getting my work going, right? And I was in this massive fear of like, I don't think I can support myself through this work. I don't know how this is going to happen. I was trying to do the responsible thing, right? So I was like, let me get a job. Maybe a job at least will give me, even if I get a part-time job, right? It'll give me some structure so that I can start to kind of lay out my day, lay out my week, in preparation for this work, right? But like I couldn't seem to find any kind of organization or structure. And so I thought, well, maybe if I had more of like that 9 to 5 mentality, I can kind of get my life together. So, of course, I've been out of like the real workforce for a very long time. All kinds of things, all kinds of energy started coming up, right? It was really challenging for me, but I just kept pushing myself because I'm like, no, I think this is the right thing to do. I need something. What I'm doing isn't working, so I'm going to try and figure this out. So I ended up getting this job, right? And it was just like the only place that would actually even call me. But I'm like, okay, well, but it showed up here, so this is what I'm going to do. Sorry, I know I keep playing with my hair, but it's like super muggy today and just like, it's been a long day. Okay, I'll stop. But so I took this job, which I thought, you know what, this is perfect. It's like an overnight job, but it's only like 5 or 6 hours and it's really early in the morning. So I'll just get up early. I'll go to work. I'll come home. I'll sleep, get a nap maybe, or just go to bed earlier and like everything will be fine. And it seemed at first like that would work out. But what started to happen was that I would go home and I would try to sleep like in between the hours of when I got home and then when my kids would get up, right? But like I couldn't sleep because it was so much more physical than what I was used to doing, right? My body was like not responding well to this at all. So I would come home and need to take a bath. Like I was in so much pain every day. It was unbelievable to me. Of course, at the time, understanding I'm also flushing out a lot of old garbage, right? So yes, it was physical, but it was also very, very emotional as well. Kind of working through these old programs of like, you can't take control of your life. You're going to fall off the face of the earth. You're never going to get control on your finances. Your whole family's going to die. All these kinds of things were coming up in my mind. It was keeping me up at night then. Like when I was trying to sleep, like I would try to go to sleep early and I would start to get insane with all of these messages coming into my brain. So I stuck this job out for about 3 weeks until it came to the point where I just could no longer sustain because I wasn't sleeping at all. Like I was exhausted all the time. I wouldn't even be able to like cook dinner. I was so tired. So I was like, all we were doing was eating fast food. And like, it was all this job then came to be was me spending the rest of my day trying to get back to this job. And it was only like 5 or 6 hours a day. And it wasn't even 7 days a week, right? Or 5 days a week, whatever. But that's all my life came to be about was this crazy job. And I was actually losing more money because I couldn't even put in the time and the effort into this work now. So it was actually like, it started to become like negative income. It was just supposed to be like extra support and a cushion so that I could relax and allow myself to just come to this work. Like I'm doing the responsible thing. I do have another job. Like maybe it'll work out. Maybe I'll get insurance, all this other kind of stuff, right? Wasn't happening at all. So it's interesting because, of course, the things that we think we're doing through the human, sometimes we're like, this is the best, like on paper, this makes sense, right? Like get a real job with the potential of getting insurance down the road, all this kind of stuff. And yet totally was like going off the cliff with this. It was a total wrong move, even though on paper, even though in my mind, even though when I said this to other people, it was like, yeah, this is the perfect solution, total perfect solution, but not where I needed to go in terms of my own energy, in terms of what my soul is calling me to do, in terms of what the universe, and I don't want to say what the universe is asking of me, right? Because it is one and the same energy, where I've planned to be, where the universe is supporting me, where the universe wants to meet me. It's all the same, right? So I ended up quitting this job, obviously, after a couple of weeks, and kind of let that all settle, because that turned out to be just this horrible kind of nightmare of an experience. And I just thought I was walking into something like, hey, this is a good like add-on. This will give you some structure. It'll like line out your day for you. When you come home, you do grocery shop, you make dinner, whatever. But it wiped out everything when it came to that. But more importantly, what it helped me to understand, because I found it so challenging to not be at a normal job, right? Where you have to like wake up and be at an office at a certain time of day and do your work. And so I was really struggling with this energy work that I've been doing to get a schedule and to feel like I was doing anything meaningful, and just feeling like I was, just sliding by with how I was showing up. And really, really frustrating, because yes, of course you can make your own hours, but then also like that gives you all the time in the day to kind of put it off until you can't put it off any longer, right? Which is really, really stressful. So what this temporary job helped me to do, because I remember sitting in my car at like 3 a.m, or whatever time it was, and getting an email from a client, and the client was like, oh my God, this like kind of like things were going crazy for her, and it was just energetically based, right? It was like, I feel awful and all this stuff, and twin this and twin that. And I thought, oh my fucking God, like, I don't want to hear about your goddamn fucking problems. Like, I can't even get my body out of this car into this place of work. And like, I just remember sitting there like, what the hell is happening? Because I love the work that I do. I love the energy work that I do. It fascinates me. I just find it like I can get completely immersed in it. And it's always showing me new things. It's like always discovering and being undercover, but uncovering these things that are going on in this world that we're not even aware of. And it just brings me so much joy to be able to connect to it this way. So when I started to have this response to this email I got, I thought, this is hell. Like, I have put myself in absolute hell. And it allowed me, though, to be in this place of hell with this other job, right, that was giving me a paycheck, which if you ever remember any of my videos, I would say, I just want to have a job with a paycheck, right? I don't have to think, and I don't have to worry, and someone can just tell me what to do, and that's it, right? But it allowed me to step then in that position of getting this paycheck, right? And it's like, well, here's all the things you're getting. You're getting that security you wanted. But then now what's happening in the other way, which was like, now I have no time. All of my energy, I was becoming a slave to this little job with this little bit of pay just to get what I thought was structure, right? So starting to question myself too as to like, did I make the wrong decision here? Like, again, logically and on paper, it seemed like the perfect solution, and it was the responsible adult thing to do, right? To ensure security for myself and my family and all this kind of stuff. But looking back now from this perspective, I'm like, okay, what it actually was doing was allowing me to step into that space to then see what it was like from that perspective, to view this job, my energy work, right? Which was to bring me this clarity of like, look, you think you have it so bad. You think it's so hard because you have to make your own hours. And it does get challenging, especially when you wake up in really heavy energy, right? It's like, oh my God, like to get yourself out of bed. But that goes for any job, of course. But really to show me like, look, it's not that bad. You can choose throughout your day then when you are going to work. If the energy is that heavy, you do have the extra time then to work through that negativity that comes up, right? This is all a gift. And yet I wasn't perceiving it that way. I was just saying, oh, this is awful. Like, it's so hard. It's so hard to be an entrepreneur. It's so hard to have your own business. It's the discipline that's required to do this work. And yet I couldn't see it because it was so up in my face, just being here doing my energy work, right? I had to literally physically step into a different perspective, a different space, in order to now see the gift of what I was actually in before. So a lot of times we'll do this, right? And I know it comes up for a lot of people, like, I want to be doing other work and I'm stuck in this job, and like, how do I get there? And I always want to say to people like, well, until your other work is really fully set, don't leave your 9-to-5 job, because it makes it really hard then when you're coming from a place of, oh God, I need to make money. And now I feel like I'm pulling on my gifts and my talents and doing things and making choices I wouldn't maybe necessarily make if I didn't feel so strapped for cash. Like, it's a tough place to be in too. But there's no perfect answer, right? Like, that's the thing. Like, sometimes we have got to get out of these jobs that are draining our life force, and maybe we do have to go on disability or do something else in the meantime, right? In order to kind of reset ourselves and allow all of that insanity to flush out. But my point is really that sometimes we think we've made a bad decision, or sometimes we beat ourselves up because we thought we had the perfect answer. But really what's happening is that we are energetic beings in a human body. We are bringing in these light codes into the human body. So the human body runs on the distorted mother code, right? The distorted energy, the energy of the land. That's what our cells, that's what our DNA has been born through and born into. So sometimes we have to physically step into these situations to flush this out of our physicality, out of our cells, in order to get to the truth of what is true for us as an energetic being, right? So did I need to take that other job? Probably not necessarily. Like, I could have come to this understanding on my own, but yet I didn't trust also my understanding that like this is where I really need to be, right? And then also all of the messages I was getting from my family and people around me, which was like, you're being irresponsible. Like, how are you going to retire? Like, you're not even bringing in income, right? All these things. So which are the programs, right? Again, like that impression from others coming through the energies to kind of throw us off track. Like, as soon as you want to step into your light, right, all this other shit comes in. So that's part of it. It's like all this stuff telling me I'm doing the wrong thing. And so I'm like, all right, let me go do the right thing. Well, the right thing actually ended up being the wrong thing, but I didn't know it was the wrong thing. And I didn't trust myself enough that I was doing the right thing until I was doing the wrong thing, right? So if this has been your experience, you will know, and this will resonate with you. Another way I can explain this, the parking lot here at the building where my office is. My parking spot is all the way in the corner. So it's all the way off to the right side. It's the farthest right parking spot. And then I also have a dumpster, which is like in the parking lot, like right behind my parking spot. But it's thin enough that I can maneuver, around it. But there's always issues with parking here, like neighbors parking here, all this kind of stuff. But my issue tends to be that, and there's a dentist's office, so people will come and go, right? So there's always kind of cars parked and then not parked and whatever. But my issue has typically been that someone will, because I'm not there at the time, someone will park and it's really close to the line, right? So it gets really challenging for me to maneuver, and then to back out is even more challenging because usually there are now cars across the way, right? So it's like this really weird obstacle, and then I have a hard time getting in and out and all this kind of stuff. Not to mention that oftentimes people will be parking in my spot, and so I just get frustrated because, then I have to park on the street or whatever. I don't want to take someone else's spot, and my bag is so heavy, right? All these kinds of things. And then a couple weeks ago, there were all these issues where the parking lot was actually being occupied. Like, one day there was a party, the next day there was like a basketball lesson, and I was like, what is going on? And so I was like emailing the building manager, and I was like, okay, I'm assuming people just didn't set up like porta potties and tables and everything for a party without some kind of permission, but still it was like really strange because I didn't hear anything about it, So I texted her and she's like, oh no, they're just having a going away party. It's just a one-time thing. Okay. And then the next day I show up, there's like a basketball lesson, right? So I texted her again, like, is this going to be like, what's going on? Is the parking lot rented out for the summer? Is there something I should know? She's like, no, that was just while the building was closed. Like, it should be over now. So just my frustration just started to build with this parking space. And so, we had kind of talked about this before, where based just all the other tenants, right? She had wanted to kind of move things around, but then it was like, people have this, like, I really want this spot and not really open to moving. And so anyway, we came to this conclusion that, the people across the way, they have two spots. One is generally open, so I could park over there. And there is another one of the other tenants in the office. They have a really big truck, so they will park in the opposite like corner spot across the way. So he backs his truck in, and that's where he stays like all day long, right? It's a really big truck, but it works good because he's in the corner. But what I also realized is because there's typically this empty space in between him and then the next tenant, that's why it works really good, right? He can get into that space because there's nobody there, and typically can get out because there's nobody there. But then I started parking in that space, right? And I was like, okay, well, I can get into this space easier, but I can't get my body out of my car now because I have like, really, it's, they smushed as many parking spaces as they could, and it's really not the best design, but it's whatever. And for the most part, most of the people are coming and going, right? So that it's not such a huge big deal. But I tended to find myself now having to park between two cars, which were always there, and not, you don't want to like bump people's doors and things like that. So I was really having a challenging time, like getting my body in and out of this parking space now. So after a couple days of this, I thought, plus not to mention, like, I would come up to my office and I'd be doing a session, and I got so distracted because I was like, oh my God, what if they get done and they need to leave? Like, is he even going to be able to get his truck out? Is he going to be knocking on my door when I'm in the middle of the session? And like, are they now mad because then now it's making it more challenging for the other guy to get into his car because I'm so close because the truck, and right? Realizing how, okay, well, now me moving has created problems for three people instead of just me having my own problem in my corner, right? So I thought, why the fuck is this all coming up like this? It's annoying that like I analyze to death every little thing. But part of what I realized is I was saying about this job, right? Needing to step into that space to understand what I actually have, right? Not such a bad thing. It was kind of the same situation. It was like, you know what? Plus, there's always a bird that seems to sit in the exact same spot that will shit on my car when I'm over there under the tree. So I was like, maybe having this car, this parking spot that, okay, yeah, I have to maneuver my way in because I don't want to hit my tire on the curb and all this kind of stuff. And maybe it's not the worst case scenario because I can scoot over as far as I need to, not worry about anybody hitting my car. I can get in and out as I need to, and let's just be done with it. And then I thought I was so mad at myself because I was like, okay, but why couldn't I see it from that perspective before I asked to have a different spot? Like, why was I not noticing how much other people were having to also sacrifice, and that it wasn't that easy for them either? And there's always this kind of musical chairs going on with the spots. And maybe there was and there wasn't, right? Because really these other two guys like have it made because there's always an empty spot in between them and they don't have to worry about it. But for whatever reason, me moving over to that other spot, I now felt responsible for messing up the lives of two other people, right? Like, is it that big of a deal? I don't know. But for me, it brought on so much anxiety that I was like, let me just stay in this other spot. And you know what? Here's what's really great about it. What is really great is that typically I don't have to worry about somebody banging their door into my car. And I don't have to worry about somebody hitting my car. And maybe my car is more valuable to me than actually how far I have to walk or how heavy my equipment is, right? Like, I don't really know what's going on here. But I do know there was this sense of, fuck, until I actually was parking in that other spot, I could not clearly see what's going on in this other part of the world, and I started to translate this even to this energy work because I'm like, well, I always kind of prided myself on being able to see clearly into people's energy fields and not just like only in my work, right? I'm not the kind of person who goes around like, oh, I think you're doing this and I think you're doing that. I think that's a big violation of energy. And I've just never naturally actually been able to do that unless it's like a close relationship and we have an issue, right? Like then I'm like, hey, this is what the fuck is going on. But I started to get a little upset with myself because I feel like part of what we should be able to do as light beings is to have this compassion and to have this kind of 360-degree view of what's going on in the world. And yet here I was, and I clearly wasn't seeing that yet. So what I also realized, though, is like I was saying in the beginning, it's like we are divine light beings, but we have these human bodies which are born and bred in distortion. And so it's almost impossible to be able to see all of the programming if we're not actually holding that programming ourselves, right? So we can know what we know by virtue of what we have been born into. And then we know the source light code, right? Which is how things should be. But what we typically cannot see is the distorted, like we can see it, but only as far as really we hold that distortion ourselves, right? So there's a lot of other stuff that's going on. Like, who knows with this other guy? Like maybe he's had problems before. This is why he always backs his truck in, right? Like for him, there's a whole story behind the way that he parks. That unless I have a big old truck and unless I do all these other things, like I wouldn't know that realm, And so there's this idea that like, okay, we can see programming as much as we can see programming, but there's still a lot that we're not privy to. And this is where we have to come into this grace and this compassion on a regular basis and not really have any judgment whatsoever about what's going on around us, because we just cannot see it, which is, in that sense, it's a good thing that we can't pick up on distortion, let's say, and have this deep knowing of it, because that would mean we have distortion in our field if we understand it that well, right? I hope that's making sense. But again, this idea of like, I was kind of questioning myself, like, did I make a mistake? Is there something wrong with me that I couldn't see that this was going to be a bad idea? Again, this sense of, until we walk away from something, we don't truly really know what we had to begin with. And oftentimes what we do have is where we're supposed to be, but we also have to release out the distortion that is related to that, like, let's say, starting point, right? So even though I'm supposed to be doing this energy work, there's a lot within it that I still have to let go of, just by virtue of being a human being. So this even goes for relationships as well, right? So when we talk about ourselves in relation to another person, we're starting to see this distorted mother code come up, right? And we're starting to understand how this has actually been part of why union within our own field has been so challenging, but also in relation to others has been so challenging, because we're looking at it from a very distorted perspective. We have this distorted lens on which we didn't even know. So what happens is that when the distortion gets to be so great and we feel like we're just cycling, sorry, I know it's getting super, super dark. We're just cycling through distortion and we're not coming to any new awareness. We're not coming into any new, let's say, we're not leveling up in our relationships, intimate relationships, relationships with our parents, relationships with our friends, whatever it might be, right? If we feel like every time we connect, we're coming and doing the same old dance, which is not serving either of us, this is when we often feel to separate. And so it's not that we're saying no to the person or no to the relationship, but what we are saying no to is that negativity, right? We are saying no to the parts that we don't understand, but the parts that feel really awful to us, right? So even with this parking space, it's like, I'm saying no to other people invading my space, right? Like, it's really pissing me off. I still need a parking space, so I'm going to go try it over here. That didn't work out. It's like, oh, well, now I actually understand better why people tend to park that far over my line. Like, it's not personal, right? But it felt so personal to me every time I would come in and be like, just because I'm not there doesn't mean I'm not coming. And it doesn't mean my spot isn't important to leave open and available. Like, I was having this very kind of visceral, personal reaction to people parking next to my space. And I've had this too, where I have had to separate out from people, but it's like, when we continue to come up against this wall and we're not making progress, sometimes one of us just has to be the better person. And we just have to say, I love you, but this part of this interaction, this part of this relationship needs to die. And we're not saying the relationship itself needs to die, right? But it's that negative interaction. We're connecting through the negativity. We're connecting through our wounding. And until we just kind of step back and allow that shit to clear out, we're going to keep coming into this, right? So people can take this very personally. I've always said it. I'm like, it's not the person, it's the energy coming through them, right? So I've had this recently where I had to really step back from a relationship. And at first I have to say, I think I was like, you know what? I'm just done with this person. I'm done with this situation. I want nothing to do with this any longer. But what's been starting to come up, especially with this clearing of this distorted mother, is that I'm starting to realize now how enmeshed our energies had been, right? Because I used to wake up and I'd wake up in this negativity and I'd be like, and I've talked about this, right? How I'd feel like I'd be at the sink, like trying to wash dishes in this negative energy. I just feel so overwhelmed and I need to leave my house and all this kind of stuff. What I'm starting to realize is like our connection probably very much targeted by these negative energies. And so until we actually separated And until I said, like, no more to this bullshit, that's when I finally started to be able to feel what is source light and what is truly me. And what is this negativity that continues to try to come in to my field to find life, right? I've always said the negativity uses us. It feeds off of us as a source of its own existence. So until I could actually feel that separation between who I truly am as the light, and then I would start to get like, why am I thinking about this person again? I'm like, wait, hold on a second. Is this, like I was saying, is this the essence tone of this person, or is this the negativity? And then trying to sort between what is what coming from this other being, and then what is my own negativity that wants to reach out just to have a physical personal connection with someone, right? We all struggle with this. Like, we're so isolated, we're so alone, we just want to connect with people, but then we find when we do connect with people, it doesn't feel good sometimes, right? So in this process of like really saying, putting up this boundary and this wall of saying no to this, what I at first thought was this relationship, right? Or this interaction between me and another person, having any kind of connection, it was really, really necessary. I didn't know what I was doing at the time, right? Again, our light, our energy field knows more than we truly know consciously. But it's been really fascinating to feel at this level. Like, I guess what I'm trying to say is continue to ask questions of the light, continue to ask for confirmation, continue to call the light in, because you will always be shown and you will always get your answers. I've had some situations over this past year where I just thought, and I think I even said out loud, like, I'm never going to know what truly happened here. I'm never going to get the answers to what went down in this exchange. But I actually have. And in fact, I felt like there's been so much justice, and I feel so vindicated in the answers that have been coming forward lately, that now I'm starting to see some other decisions that I made in terms of kind of breaking away from things. And I'm starting to understand that, okay, it's not about feeling or being punished by the universe or being punished by the light, right, for wanting what I want in my life. It's about, like I've said, the light leaves no stone unturned, and we're not here to be in union with ourselves or other people within distortion. The gift of being here is truly that we are supposed to be here in relationship with others within source origin code, divine code. So it is absolutely possible for these things to be healed. But until we absolutely say no to the distorted ranges, to the bullshit, to the crap, to the cycling and the looping, to going nowhere in these relationships, until we do that, we don't get the clarity and the clarification. We don't feel the essence of the energies of who we are or who the other person is, right? So even if we have this relationship, let's say with our mothers, which is all, right, this is like the beginning of these videos that I was talking about on my other channel. Feeling controlled by the mother, feeling like the mother's asking things of us that we just can't live up to, we can't provide, and like, why do I feel so awful because I have my own life, and yet I still feel guilty because I know I need to help you, and then, but yet, why does it never feel like that's enough, and like, I've helped you, like, why is there always more in this pull on me, and like, this whole insanity, right? But yet, it's my mother, so I can't fully completely cut ties. But energetically, sometimes we have to say no to the bullshit, and we have to step back until we can clearly see the controlling energy that's going on there, right? And until we can see, and this is where I say, call in the light, call the light in to give you information and answers. I get so many answers through Netflix, through movies, right? I don't even realize why I'm starting to watch a series or a movie or whatever it is. And then eventually I'm like, oh, this makes sense now. I see what's playing out here, and I see how I'm playing it out as well. And I can see because I'm watching through a different perspective, right? I'm watching it on a movie screen, so it's not so personal. So I'm able to see what's really going on. It's like, why can't you see what she's doing? Oh my God, I'm letting the same thing happen to me, right? So everything around you is a message. Everything is the light trying to come through to clarify for you what is happening. So it's not that we need to necessarily cut people out of our lives, but we do have to cut off that negative siphoning of the energy. And until we can, it's not about shutting people out of our lives, but it's about clearly seeing the negative pattern and how we are being pulled into it. Because when we continue to be pulled into it and continue to play out that negative relationship, we are continuing to feed the system. And we're not supposed to be here doing that. So as long as we continue to do that, we're going to feel worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. Right? So sometimes we always have to separate, to take that step back. Right? It may just be for an hour or a day sometimes, depending on what the situation is. But to know that it's not about cutting ties necessarily physically with people. People say, well, how do we get these energies out? Like, now that we see them, how do we do this? Well, you do have to step back so that you can see, okay, what is the trigger? How do I get pulled in? And then it loops, and then let's start it over. Let me see if I can catch it this time. Okay, where is it what they say, or is it because I feel it first? Or like, how does this play out? This is how we start to release this shit. Deeply understanding our role in the negative system. And once we start to unravel all of this, this is when source light starts to come in more and more and more, right? So I always feel like sometimes I have to say no to these things and I feel awful, but then it's like I always feel like I'm rewarded because my vision gets stronger, my insight gets stronger, I understand it better, I start to feel more powerful, right? And then I can come back in and say, okay, let's look at this again. So we think sometimes we're losing something. Physically, it feels like that. Energetically, we're gaining so much more sometimes. So it's not about saying no to the person or the relationship. It's about saying no to the negativity. And let's see if we can get this negativity to clear out so that we can get to a space where we can move beyond that and we can be within our joy of source light, which is, that's what we're supposed to be here doing. It's supposed to be fun. We're supposed to feel like we are in these impassioned places, enjoying each other's company and creating in the light and creating in joy, not negativity. I promise you that is not what we're supposed to be here doing. And yet we were born into it, so it feels like it. We felt like we got rewarded for being there. But this is what's all flushing out. We have to come to understand this is not the goal of why we exist in this realm whatsoever. Okay. I hope this makes sense. There are a lot of kind of messages floating around here. And I know it's just like super dark. I apologize. But thank you so much for your presence. I always appreciate. I love connecting with you. Take good care.